So did you know that you might be sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars on freedom pathway to getting 0% periods on your credit cards, like eternally? It might just be right under your nose if you have a home with some equity, and you might be passing up on a HELOC, right? So today I want to talk about a HELOC and the benefits that you can get from it, and all the things that it can be useful for, and what you want to look for in a HELOC, right? So number one, I've said this a couple of times, but this is a really big thing that I've leveraged it for a lot, is to be able to use a HELOC just to be able to shift some things around, right? So sometimes in going for funding and doing different things, like where you have balances and how long they've been there or what's there, it actually is important, right? So sometimes that balance could be a balance in your bank account, right? So if I have a certain balance in my bank account, or if I leave a balance in a bank, like say I open a checking account at a bank that I want to start a relationship with, and I leave that balance there for a certain amount of time, that can increase my bank rating, my internal banking score with that bank. And then when I go for funding with that bank, now I'm in a much better place. Now it's possible, if you do the numbers right and everything makes sense, to pull money from a HELOC, from a home equity line of credit, and put it there temporarily to get that access, and then to be able to shift it back later, right? So now let's look at the flip side of that. So this is like kind of number two. So with the HELOC, now we're looking at, like, say I have balances, like credit card balances on my business credit cards, right? Now some banks, if you go through a particular person, like a branch, a business relationship manager, then sometimes you can get around this, right? But a lot of times banks are actually looking at your business credit balance, right? So we talked about the advantage of business credit being, okay, if I use the business credit, then it's not showing up on my personal credit report, right? And I can use as much as I want to, which is true. Now, you do have a business credit score that stands on its own. So when I use up all that credit, it's fine, but they do want to see you paying it back, right? They do want to see you paying it back quickly. And they don't want to see just high balances sitting there forever, because it makes you look risky, right? So you want to take that risk off. So if you do have balances, maybe you've been doing some different plays, maybe you're waiting on a real estate flip to finish, maybe you're doing some investment in a mentorship or an infinite banking. We haven't talked about that yet. But if you are doing that and you have balances on there and you want to go for more funding, right? Or maybe you need to do something else, and you need the balance to show, maybe it's below 50%, maybe it's below 40%, maybe below 30%, depending on the bank. You can take that balance and liquidate that balance and shift it over either through a balance transfer, through a liquidation company. There's a lot of different paths to do that, but you can shift that over to the HELOC, right? Now this HELOC balance shows up on your personal report. However, the only difference is, depending on the institution that you're with, that HELOC balance will not show up as a revolving credit. So even though it might be like a high amount that's on there, it's not counting towards your personal utilization, right? And this is in my case. So you want to check with your HELOC, like whoever you're banking with, and see how are they going to report it. Because on mine, even though I have a high balance on the HELOC, it's not necessarily showing, so my credit score does not drop, my FICO score does not drop, right? Even though I have that balance on the HELOC. So the balance gets transferred over. Now my business credit cards are showing a low balance, and guess what? Then I can go for more funding. And a round of funding that might produce 30,000, 50,000, 75,000, 100,000, depending on the strategy. And then I get that extra 100,000, and I've got some new 0% cards for 12 months, for 9 months, for 15 months. And then guess what? Now I can take that balance from the HELOC and then move it back over to the business credit side, right? So now I've got that same debt, I've got it over there, but now it's at a new 0% period. And now I've got a lot more to be able to use to leverage for funding, right? So that's another big thing, right? Just to be able to use it and shift it over. Now let's talk about some of the ways that you can leverage HELOC and what you want to be looking for in this HELOC, right? So a lot of times you can get a HELOC that is, they call it the loan to value, right? So 80% is probably like normal. There are some credit unions that will do 90%, and I found one that will do 100% of the value of your home. So the difference between the mortgage, whatever you owe, and whatever the current value is, that's that percentage, right? The more that you can get, the better. Now, that doesn't mean you just automatically just go out and use all of it, but having more room in there does change things, because now you have like a different utilization within that. So maybe I could use a certain amount, but I didn't use all of my available credit limit. for the HELOC because I had some room left over, right? So I was able to get 100% of the value of my home, and the difference between that and what I owed, that's what I had to play with. And I was able to do a lot of different things, invest in different projects and different things like that, and also do that play that I just told you about as far as, okay, maybe I'm shifting a balance temporarily and then being able to shift it back, or funding something temporarily, and you have really direct access to this line of credit where you can just pull the money out. I can wire it, I can transfer it, I can write a check, so all of those are very, very useful. So what you want to be looking for is the loan to value, right? So if you have a credit union in your area, you can just literally call up and ask them, hey, what's your loan to value that you offer and what are the terms, right? So here's the other thing. So they might do 80%, they could do 70. You want to look for one, if you can, look for one that will do 100%. Now, the next thing you want to look for is, are they doing interest only for your payments, or is it principal and interest? So a lot of them will have an interest only period, 10 years of a repayment period that's interest only, and then after the 10 years, then it's principal and interest. So this is what you would want, because now, so the cost of borrowing that money is going to be different, right? So let's say you take out $20,000 and whatever that is, and you need to use it for 2 months, to do something, to do an investment or to do a lending or something like that. And you're only paying interest only for that. So now it's a much smaller amount that you're responsible for, and then you can, level up and make things right after that, right? So the next thing that you can do is, after that interest only period, right? Just want to look out, because some of them might be charging principal and interest, right? So the other thing you want to look out for with your HELOC is going to be, any fees or anything like that. Like, do they have fees up front? Like, what's the origination? And also, how long is it going to take them to close? Right. So some of them move very, very slowly. The process is long and drawn out, and it might be 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks until you can get closed. And some of them will say, hey, 14 days or 21 days, like we're guaranteed to move forward. And depending on what you need to do and how soon you need to do it, you might want to know that as well, right? So I'm gonna cut that here. I just wanted to come in real quick and share some insight with you, for those of you that, again, if you do have a home, or even if you have an investment property, that's another thing we haven't talked about, is you can get a HELOC on an investment property if you find the right lender. It's a whole nother video to talk about the all-in-one HELOC and some of that strategy with velocity banking and things like that. But being able to leverage this equity and use this money, it's really your money that you just can't access, right, until sometime later in the future. So just being able to, again, if you have the right strategy, to be able to leverage that money and to use it for your purpose, right? So if you need to look into it, I encourage you now to just check it out and see what you can find out about HELOC. Again, credit unions are great, banks are cool, but local credit unions are usually going to give you the best rates and the best results. So hope that was helpful. Press like, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.